All right. Well, I think we got our technical issues resolved. So thank you everybody who came on at 1:15, my first Facebook Live event. So I'm so grateful to have you guys here with me and with Jason. So Jason, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I want to share it on my Facebook page. I'm excited that we're doing this because this is my first time as well doing a Facebook Live event. I hope this works. But we had a little glitch at the beginning, but I'm ready to roll right now. But yes, the great topic today, a lot of stuff to talk about. And one, before that, it's great to have you on board.
Yeah, man,
on
it's
Faith
awesome.
and Marriage, man. Been a dream, been a prayer, and God answered that, and we're here together working on this, and so I'm pumped, brother. So
well, when we started this thing, the reason that we did it is so that we could have moments like this, to be able to talk like this and to do Facebook Live events. And so for everybody who's listening right now, watching in, we want to really just appreciate you guys being here with us, and know that we're going to be doing more Facebook Live events where we're going to talk about other topics, as well as future TV shows. So we're really excited about that.
Yes. Creating content, trying to provide resources, shouting from the rooftops or from the Facebook page, wherever it's at.
Well, yeah, man, I think this is the digital platforms and digital media is the crossroads of culture, of life, of family.
Conversations.
And so conversations, and we just want to be able to offer something to people that hopefully helps to bless their faith as well as their family and marriage life, which is really what we're all trying to do here at faithandmarriage.org. So to bring our focus for today, earlier this week I wrote a blog post about my thoughts related to this toxic masculinity, or this thought that's kind of emerging. And so I think that for our conversation today, I would love for us to be able to just talk a little bit more about it. So where did the desire come from? Well, first, I'm a man, and so I'm certainly have some sensitivity about the messages that are there. But even more so than that, it's that I'm a father of four boys.
Yeah.
And so because I have 4 sons, and we go to the movies a lot, and we watch a lot of TV shows, and we read books and stuff, I'm very sensitive more for their hearts regarding what messages are being communicated.
Absolutely. And they learn so much from the books, from the movies, from the music that they listen to, that we got to be able to help guide them through in thought of what it is that they're saying.
Yeah, and because I'm a counselor and I'm always looking at what the hidden messages are when I watch a movie, I'm dissecting films, and I'm trying to pay attention not just to the narrative that's at work, but what's the deeper message that the producers or the directors of the film are trying to communicate. And I think there's, at least what I've seen, has been a certain trend related to how we think about men in movies. I grew up at a time where I loved Star Wars and the original trilogy, and seeing both strong and male and female characters doing what they're supposed to do together, that it seems, at least in my opinion, that here over the last few years, what we've seen is a shift away from that, away from just equality, which is what it should be, that men and women should look with strength, should complement one another, but towards a movement where we actually want to belittle men. And a couple examples that I think I want to offer is, well, first, The Last Jedi, thinking about Star Wars. Bishop Barron has spoken about this on his YouTube page, about how all the men were depressed or incredulous or cynical or lazy or just goofy. And then the women were the strong characters that had all the answers, and they were able to take care of everything. Follow up with that, I think the Lego movie, the second one specifically, the trailer, I actually can't wait to see it. I love the first one. I thought it was brilliant when it came out. But still, there's an element of it where Emmett is goofy and Lucy is not. And so that plays out in some of the trailers for the second Lego movie that's coming out. But the one that I really want to talk about is Incredibles 2, which is the same thing. The first one, I know that's one of your favorite movies of all time, so you can talk about that for a second.
One of Bella's first movie. You know, we got to go see it. I remember watching it and just being blown away by it. I remember when I bought the DVD, they have the behind-the-scenes stuff. Some great stuff to check out in their behind-the-scenes special edition type stuff.
I know, and I
it's
know,
great.
I know that after
really
we talked
fantastic.
about the second one, I kind of
when you came
into
my office, you're like, so did you see the second one? I was like, yeah, I did. And I started like just excited because I got to go see it again with the kids and everything. And then it wasn't. And then as you started talking about it, I'm like, yeah, that did happen. Yeah, you're right. Oh, man.
Yeah.
So which you helped me to remember that when we go see these movies, that we can't just go in there blind. Like we gotta have our minds in check too.
Well, we just need to be sure that we're smart consumers of the media,
especially
and
when
that we're helping our
kids
kids to filter through whatever messages that are coming through. Because kids' movies always have a teaching element to it. They always have this element of morality or thought about how the world should be, that we want to make sure that those messages that are coming to our families are ones that we agree with. And I guess the fundamental message that I took away from The Incredibles 2 was really just that Mrs. Incredible is her way of being a superhero is just better than Mr. Incredible's way of being a superhero. And where you really see that comparison is with the runaway train scene, which
Right.
in the first movie is what sets up the whole dilemma of supers being sued and having to go into hiding.
Right.
Because Mr. Incredible did it as Mr. Incredible with some violence, some destruction,
Yeah.
masculine
got hurt.
strength and energy, but he
Right.
was saving people as he was doing that.
Right.
While in the second movie, she was able to stop the runaway train with finesse, with grace.
Nobody got hurt.
Nobody got hurt, in that
Damage was
starts to
minimal.
propel movement towards acceptance of superheroes.
And that underlined the point was in the beginning, before that all happened, right? So they're having that conversation in the war room, right? And it was Mr. Incredible, Mrs. Incredible, and the guys like saying, we want to bring supers out of hiding. And so Mr. Incredible thinks, okay, I'm the one. And then he's like, no, I think our better play is going to be Mrs. Incredible. And then that happens.
That's right.
So you see then that masculinity, as you were helping me to see in this movie, the way they pointed out was that it's too destructive. It's too costly,
it's too violent.
and there's a better way of doing it. In
Yes.
fact, the better way is going to be femininity.
It's going to be feminine. Yeah.
And
so
it's-
with that, then, some of the messages that are coming out with some of the women's marches,
Right.
the future is female.
Yeah.
That type of narrative, I think, is not so much about equality as much as it's about degrading
Right.
the masculine side of humanity,
Right.
And elevating the feminine side.
Which
Now-
here's and the thing too to be careful of is that like we're not saying in any way, shape, or form that femininity is bad. In
No,
fact,
of course not.
What we're trying to say is that you can't just elevate one without the detriment of the other. If you
That's
can
it.
save both of them, if you can put both of them where they're supposed to be in place alongside each other as equals but different. Equality does not mean sameness.
Right.
And so if we can value the differences and see the equality of who we are, creating the image and likeness of God, that our strength is more not when one's in power over the other, suppressing the other,
That's
but
correct.
when both are using the gifts and blessings and talents that they've been given by God together in harmony, that is where our humanity, our country, our world will thrive and survive.
That's it. And so the word that comes up often is complementarity, at least
That's
in
it.
Catholic thought, is then when you think about complementarity, like two pieces of a puzzle that fit together, one has to ask then what are the unique qualities
Yes.
of men? What are the unique strengths and limitations that are typically found within men and masculinity? And then at the same time, what are the unique qualities of women? And what are the typical kind of strengths and weaknesses or limitations that are there? Because the word limitation is key, because we are limited, and it's in the limitation that we actually complement one another, that we fit together, that we make up for each other. And the goal of society should be trying to find how we can accentuate the good of men and the good of women without having to degrade one or the other, or use one or the other, objectify one or the other, to be able to find the space where the two of them can kind of work together in harmony and in relationship.
That's right. I mean, to be able to try to elevate women at the detriment of dogging or putting down or trying to reject men is wrong, just as it would be to elevate men would be to then to dog and unfortunately dog and manipulate and hurt women. But we do live in a world that has been wounded in so many ways about this. I remember growing up hearing stories about my grandmother, who was basically working the same job that a man could have been doing, but she was doing this job and making like a quarter of what she should have been making, a quarter of what a man would have made. So she wasn't being equal pay. And so I remember hearing these stories, and my grandmother was a single mother of 5 children. And so I heard stories from my dad of the inequality and the stress and the struggle that my family, my dad and siblings had to go through because of this in society, this inequality that was going on. So. And there's so many stories of situations where women not being able to vote and being able to be treated a certain way, or because they're just a woman, or all these things. There's egregious errors in that, primarily at the hands in these stories of men in power, not using the gifts that they've been given authentically and exploiting.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. And so to not say that a woman, we're not at all saying that a woman's place is only being barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen.
No,
of course not. Absolutely not. And that's not what we're communicating. So there's a place where the feminist movements absolutely have drawn attention and have corrected some of the errors that are here. But let's bring this back to masculinity. What do you think about the term toxic masculinity?
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is that, like, well, what are you talking about? Are you saying that masculinity in and of itself is toxic? That being a man is this toxic potion in this world that's causing all the problems and the harm? Because if that's the case, then I'm like, oh my goodness, and we got a problem, because that now you've just thrown every man under the bus, and you basically said that everything that a man brings to the table is bad, and every man should be acting like a woman. So that's my first thing. But then at the same time, I'm like, but it's got to be deeper. So what is it? What is it that is toxic? It can't be masculinity, right?
Right. I'm not the one asking the question here, so I just want to be sure.
Yeah, right.
Like, no, absolutely. It can't just be masculinity as a whole. But what do you think about it?
So for me, the things that are toxic, when you see in masculinity, I mean, you see men going to strip clubs,
right?
Also called so-called gentlemen's club,
yeah,
right? That's
what
toxic.
A misnomer.
Right, exactly. Or pornography, like
yes.
like the magazines would be called men's magazines. It's not men's magazines.
No.
That's not a gentleman's club.
No.
Infidelity, the gifts that we've been given, the strength that we have. When we abuse someone else with that strength and that power that we have as men, that gifts that we've been given as men, to exploit one another, to use one another, using specifically the gifts that we've been given as male. And so, I mean, we could say this on the female side too, the gifts that a woman has exploiting another man, but keep in the context of let's try to figure out what this toxic masculinity looks like.
Yeah, I agree.
And what is the solution?
Yeah, and so I guess what I wrote in the post this past week, and if anybody wants to access that you're following right now, please go to faithandmarriage.org and click on the blogs. You'll be able to see this right up there. And what I said in this is echoing what you just communicated, which is that a man's strength is a gift.
Yes.
And that it's at its best when it creates an environment of safety for those that he loves.
Right.
Not the opposite. A man's strength becomes toxic when he abuses power, when he abuses women, physically, emotionally, intimately, however you want to say that, and others that are supposed to be within his care.
That's right.
But a man's strength is certainly a gift that should be used and should be accentuated and encouraged in society.
You know, I love what you mentioned in the blog. You had said that chivalry is not dead, and you gave some great examples. Why don't you say some of that?
Yeah. So one of the examples I gave is, and I know you talked about this also. So when I was in high school, even before like my conversion, even in my wayward years of late high school, I found Jesus in college. So that'll be another podcast or blog or whatever, some other story. You can get the backstory of it all.
Go Brothers at FSU.
Yeah, go Bros of Hope. Anyway, so when I was in high school, we would go out Latin dancing often, and we would always go in groups. Sometimes it would just be the guys, but sometimes we'd have the girls in the group. Our friends would go as well. And when we were driving there was always, like we would talk about it, but it was unspoken. The unspoken rule, which was if one of the girls in the group is approached by a creepy dude that wants to dance with her, then it was our obligation to go and intervene, so to speak. So if she was dancing with a guy that was making her feel uncomfortable, all she needed to do was just, give us the look. If she could just give us the look, we'd be like, all right, we know what we're supposed to do. We'd step right in, get the guy out of the way, and then we'd start dancing with her. And then, the guy would get pissed off, obviously. He'd get upset about it, but, we had to do what we had to do to make sure that she was okay.
And why do we do that? Why do we walk our date to the door or our bride? Why do we open the doors for ladies? Why do men generally propose? And it's because we're trying to take on the sacrifice. Fulton Sheen says it's not superiority. He says it's sacrifice. I'm going to open it not because you're not weak enough to open that door. I'm going to open the door because I want to serve you. I'm going to take the risk and ask for the lady's hand in marriage because I'm going to take the blunt of rejection, so she doesn't have to worry about that. I'll take the rejection. I'll take the no, so you don't have to if it comes around the other way. So we've been given this call as men to do more though than just buy the flowers, open the doors, pay for the meals. Because again, you're paying for the meal. Why are you paying for the meal? Not because the woman doesn't have money. You're paying for the meal because of the sacrifice it took you to earn that money to then go out there and pay for that meal. And you want to lay down again as a gift, not for selfish reasons.
That's right.
But to be able to give a gift. And so, what does true, authentic masculinity looks like? Because the solution is not to reject masculinity. The solution is not to throw that out the door, but to reclaim it and authentically. And when we see that, I think in the Christian message, what we see in Christ, Jesus Christ, as the church teaches, and John Paul II spoke a lot on this, Jesus Christ fully reveals man to himself in his most high calling. And when we look to Christ, we see a man who is willing to lay down his life for his bride. A man that says, I have come not to be served, but to serve and to offer my life as a ransom for many. So that, if you want to look at what does real masculinity looks like, what is a father or a husband or a man of God, what we're called to do as men with the gifts that we've been given, we're called to be a gift to another. to be a sincere, authentic gift.
Yeah, that's it. And so let's go with the date example here. If it is a real sacrifice, then it's a gift.
That's right.
But if it's only out of signaling how good I am, how big my feathers are, so to speak, here. Peacocking, whatever.
All dressed up.
We get all dressed up when we take to the fancy restaurant, just so I can kind of push the buttons a certain way to get what I want as the date progresses. That would not be.
It's exploiting.
That would be exploiting.
Abusing.
That's it.
The strength that you've been given, the gift of self. You're going to give yourself away in some manner, shape, or form. It's going to be for the sake of yourself. Like I'm going to do it for my pleasure, for myself, or I'm going to do it for another. And Christ calls us that love that we're called to. St. Thomas Aquinas says that love is to will the good of the other. So I've got to choose that will, and I've got to live my life as a gift for the other. And if I do that authentically, then that love is actually going to lead that person closer to God, because God is our ultimate good.
Yeah, man, that's it. And so we should, as men, encourage one another to be better. So with that, I think let's talk about the Gillette commercial for a second, because it's getting some traction here. And I guess when I looked at it, I've seen it a couple times. At face value, honestly, I think that the message is pretty clear. Men, it's just what we're talking about. Men need to encourage other men to be better. Men need to encourage other men because the boys are looking on. And so we need to be better models in how we relate to women. We also need to be better in not just solving everything through violence, which I'm okay with those messages. My concern with the video or with the commercial is that you can't, it's so hard in today's day and age where you almost can't see a message like this and just take it at face value without having to question the political or even financial intentions that may be undergirding it. So again, do I know what the hearts are of the people who are producing this commercial? I don't know. But I know it's gotten some backlash and it's being viewed as controversy, maybe because of some of the figures that are used inside the news section of it. But I don't know, but I'll take the message, I'll be honest, at face value. And if I want to give a charitable read, which is always the Catholic way, we should always try to give a most charitable read unless indicated otherwise.
And because of the amount, we're talking about a lot of movies lately that have thrown men under the bus as weak, inept, deceiving, or very easily just swayed into the wrong, right? You've got that. You've got just a lot of these bad examples in our culture, in our day and age today, where I feel like it's hard not to think of that Gillette commercial as being another one of those opportunities to throw men under the bus, to be this another example of what does it mean that boys will be boys? What are you talking about? Are you saying that boys will always get into a fight, or boys they're active?
I guess just to, I mean, not to defend them, because I don't know where their hearts are coming from. But we do know that message does get used sometimes, to explain away bullying or even other, harassment issues, where it's it's just a guy. Guy's just got his needs. Right. Boys are just going to be boys. In that regard, and that type of it's just, refs are just going to make mistakes, right?
Oh yeah, right.
let's talk about that. You know what I'm saying here, right? That's Goodell's comment. Refs are just going to make mistakes.
Well, here's the thing.
In that type of sense where there's no accountability, then I think you're right to attack that message. But at the same time, boys, I have boys. And boys will be boys at the same time, and they will resort to wrestling more than they will to words. And I'm a counselor. My wife is a social worker. We are the king and queen of use your words, right? This is a mantra that exists in our home. And even within this, they are still duking it out, but then they are hugging it out later, because that's the other side of the equation. Is usually guys will go, fisticuffs, and then they'll go get a beer afterwards.
It was beautiful is that because you and your wife both are working together to intentionally guide this masculine strength, not to stifle it, not to say some celebrity I think just said that they're going to raise their child genderless. You're gonna find out who they are, appreciate the gifts that they've been given, created in the image and likeness of God, all male in your household,
all male in the household,
and you're gonna not stifle that, but you're going to build that up and foster that and direct that in the right direction. And that's my problem when I hear boys will be boys. That I think part of what they're saying is that boys will just lust. boys will just abuse, boys will just hurt. And so then I'm like, okay, no, let's not do that,
right.
because I've got 4 daughters.
That's right.
Right? And so when people say 4 daughters, oh my goodness, first they say like, oh, 4 weddings. I'm like, well, we might have a vocation in there to the religious life, so don't count that out. But still, who cares? I'll pay for 1,000 weddings, with 1,000 daughters, but that's actually, don't quote me on that one because that's pretty expensive. But the point though,
Jason will be setting up a separate GoFundMe
fund. That's a different thing.
We'll do another video on that one so you can start supporting the wedding fund of the Angelette household. But my point is that
I'm not going to not have a child because of a wedding. The cost of expense of a wedding.
Correct.
Like, good night.
Correct.
Have you not seen Father of the Bride where he wanted to do in the backyard with hot dogs and like that?
Scene.
Great movie, right? That's brilliant. But anyway, but my point is that so some people will send me outside besides the whole the daughters and the wedding and all that. People will say, well, man, you got to watch out for your girls. Like, wait, hold on. Like, are you telling me that then the boys are just let loose to do whatever to do and I've got to sit there and shelter and protect my girls? Like, no, let's do this together. How about I train my daughter to be a virtuous woman of God?
Right.
And how about you train your sons to be virtuous men of God? Then all of a sudden, bam, we've got a whole culture that's going to change.
That's what we're trying to do, man.
That's right.
That's it. And hopefully we can do that. Yeah, and so back to like this message, the other thing that's gotten some traction here in the last 6 months or so is that the American Psychological Association put out for the first time guidelines on how to do counseling or psychotherapy, provide psychological services guidelines for men and boys.
Right.
2007, they put one out similar for women and girls, and then last year they put the one out for men and boys. And again, some of it is stuff that we need to hear, which is that we have to encourage our boys and our men to have more emotional expression than just anger. And the authors also recognize that there are some real issues that are happening with boys. Incarceration rates are much higher among men than compared to women. Most of school violence happens against boys than it does against girls. Expulsions, failing grades, a lot of that is boys more than it is women and girls in our day and age. So I don't have an issue with the problem as they see it and the need to want to encourage men to have more emotional expression and being able to articulate their feelings and have more freedom to not just fall into the stoicism that has marked masculinity for probably the last couple hundred years. But I guess one of my concerns when I read the statement is that it seems like the APA is going back to kind of what we've said, which is promoting more that the behaviors between men and women become indistinguishable.
Right.
So rather than trying to ask what the strength is of men and what the strength is of women and how to encourage that, it's almost trying to obliterate it and continue to push a genderless society where everything is just interchangeable and there is no fundamental difference between men and women, and it's just what you wear or whatever it is.
Not just to men, but an insult to women. Right? Like it's basically saying, let's just go on in this neutral ground where there's no masculinity, there's no femininity. And it's like, it's such a slap in the face to every man and every woman. Like they're basically saying like the gifts that you've been given, we need to suppress those. We need to actually try to extinguish them and then just act like this.
Well, no, because you're right. Because I think you said this earlier, what ends up happening is that when we're not complimenting and honoring both, what ends up happening is one gets elevated over the other. And certainly the feminism, the second wave feminism that started in the 60s was going against that because men, the masculine traits had been elevated over the feminine ones. But what we're seeing now is almost this inverse, and we need to kind of correct this. And so things that were typically masculine that are going by the wayside or that are viewed with suspicion are things like, I don't know, competition, for example. Right? Everybody gets a medal. Yeah. And so when everybody gets a medal, there's no need to have to perform your best. That's right. See, competition isn't bad. Like my boys, if they're playing basketball or taekwondo or doing whatever it is, like to win isn't necessarily a bad thing. Like it can lead to pride and vanity. Sure. But what it also does is it leads to confidence. There used to be the whole masculine initiation, right, where boys would have to go kill the lion. The rite of passage. Yeah. And that wasn't to objectify or to suppress or to minimize or dominate. No, not at all. What that was intended to do was to give the boy confidence. Right? And you just killed that lion.
That's right.
If you killed that lion, man, you can do anything now. With that confidence, you can go be a dad. Yeah. Right? Now with that confidence, you can go take care of the women in your life.
Right. Well, biblically, David against the Goliath, he goes to the king and says, I will fight for him. Yes. And they're like, who are you? Like he's like, no. I fought lions. I fought the beasts and I conquered them. It's like, and so that prepares them for the temptations and the battles that they will fight later on in their life.
Yeah, and
Unfortunately, David kind of fell at the end.
I guess the thing is that we need to reclaim that hardship isn't a bad thing.
Exactly.
That competition isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Right.
And without these resistance, without things that actually push back against us, we don't fully develop our full self. Yeah. And so the unendearing term that's kind of used for some of the younger generation is this snowflake. The snowflakes, have you heard this, right?
Right.
It's not one term that I would use, I'll just make this clear. But it's a term that's used to kind of say, well, there's a group of, or this generation is just people that don't know what it means to work hard, to get what they need. And I think, in my estimation, that's one of these unintentional consequences when we've lost sight of these masculine virtues.
Exactly. The more that we're going to attack masculinity, and I just wish that everybody would figure this out, that if you attack masculinity and you try to suppress it and try to devalue it, at the same time you're destroying and devaluing and attacking femininity.
Of course.
And at the same time, not just masculine, feminine, again, the human race. So we're losing as a society the more that we attack each other. And what we need to see is appreciate that, yes, we are different. We're equal, but we're not the same. And what we need to do is take the gifts that we've been given, receive those gifts well, and live it out authentically. We can't go around and just think that we can just by power and domination, male or female, try to win against and go against who we are.
Yeah, so who are people that you think are kind of speaking about this kind of clearly regarding Christian masculinity?
Well, I mean, the voice I love everybody to reflect on the passion of Christ. I mean, that is masculinity lived out. I was listening to Father Mike Schmidt just not that long ago. He did the men's conference. Encourage everybody to go check it out. Go on YouTube. He spoke at the Arlington conference. Father Mike Schmidt. He's got some great videos on Ascension Press. Also, I was listening to Father John Hallowell. Phenomenal stuff. You can just Google Catholic masculinity in YouTube, and you can get some great videos from them. And it really talks about this summing up of the church is teaching on sacrifice and giving of ourselves in authentic love, and not to be passive. That's the other thing, is that you've got people who are causing us. It's trying to push us into this silence, to be passive, to be non-aggressive, to just kind of let it all happen and lose control, or not embrace the responsibility that we've been taking. I think that's the big message, that we've got to take the responsibility that we've been given and carry our cross, not our throw pillow to kind of find a spot to go chill out and watch the game, but to pick up our cross, to follow our Lord. And that's going to be the awakening that we need in all men, to be that iron verse, that as iron sharpens iron, so man will sharpen his fellow man.
Yeah, man. So as you're talking, what I'm thinking is immediately it's like it's daunting, right? It's daunting. It's daunting, and we would want to say like, okay, it's going to be hard, so don't do it. Like just settle. Maybe it's not that clear. I shouldn't be so negative. But sometimes we steer towards comfort, or we steer towards making things safe, rather than saying it is going to be hard.
Yeah,
it is daunting.
Yeah,
and
but it's worth the fight.
And that's okay.
It's worth the fight, and to fight the good fight. And that's the thing, is that we got to realize that it's not meant to be comfortable and easy for us. The moment that we're doing that is the moment that we're falling down. Not just that we're like falling down and not fighting the fight, but we're actually fighting with the enemy. Mm-hmm. We're losing the battle on both fronts if we lose, not just men who are just trying to just get out of the game and people who are just going to fight against us. That we need to see that all of us have a responsibility to play.
Yeah, and so if you're listening to this and you have boys or kids at home as you're watching movies, I just want to first and foremost encourage you to listen to the messages and being able to dialogue with your kids when you start hearing messages that you may or may not agree with, so that they can open their eyes to be able to start seeing what's coming at them, culturally speaking, with greater kind of clarity.
And I would say, as we're closing out, I would say that we need so much to just dive deeper into this understanding of what is true masculinity and what is true femininity, and see that the only time it's toxic is when sin reigns. And when we truly live out the truth of masculinity, the truth of femininity, that we will be a better people, a better church, a better society, and we'll have true equality, not by eradicating our differences, but by valuing what we bring to the table uniquely. So thank y'all so much for tuning in. We've got so many great topics we'd love to talk more about.
Awesome.
But let us know, send us a comment, give us some feedback. We'd love to hear from you. You can check us out online at faithandmarriage.org. We also have our YouTube channel. Yep. We have podcasts. Always Hope is fantastic. Yeah. And some great guests you've been bringing in. So thank you for all the work that you're doing. Mario's blog, Dr. Mario's blog again. You can check us out online. Also, we have 2 events two events, 20 seconds left, two events coming up February 20th at the New Orleans Archdiocese Retreat Center. Dr. Mario and I will be there giving an evening presentation, wine, and food. Love to see you there. Also, our next married couples retreat will be March 16th and 17th at the newly renovated St. Joseph Christian Life Retreat Center. Love to have you there. We have spots available. You can do registration on our website. Again, that's faithandmarriage.org. And thank you so much, and God bless.